This is Nifty Culture. I'm Theo. I'm here with my partner, Mal. What's going on, Mal?
What's up, Theo? How's it going?
It's going well. We have the pleasure of speaking with the creator of the Goblin Goons NFT project, an NFT project, collectibles project that is getting a good deal of hype that drops tomorrow. The Goblin King himself, Theo. How's it going, Theo?
How's it going? Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're excited to do it. So, just kind of kicking it off, give us some context. What's the deal with the Goblin project? What makes this project stand out compared to other avatar projects that have been releasing on OpenSea? What's like the whole thesis behind the Goblin Goons?
So I originally had the idea after seeing kind of all the profile picture project hype since, I guess, Bored Apes was really the one to kick it off. And I've been running a Discord server for NFT investors since February, I believe. And it's been pretty cool seeing the space evolve and all these profile picture projects come to market and basically see what works and what doesn't. And the whole idea with that server was just giving people good buying advice and what makes a project successful, whether that's scarcity, community, utility, or whatnot. And basically, I just had the idea, why not try to do a project that combines all the interesting and valuable aspects while, learning from projects that have made mistakes in this market.
Okay.
As for the actual concept of the art and whatnot, I think a lot of projects have done like animals, and I think the fantasy approach is pretty interesting. And obviously Goblins, a lot of inspiration from Lord of the Rings and other things like Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone and World of Warcraft and that sort of fantasy stuff.
Yeah, it's a refreshing take. Like we were seeing a lot of that confusion. Like one of the reasons that we got excited about this project, and we're just going to hop straight into it, was the goats were kind of one of the first attention grabbers with some of that utility. But when you think about, like, I like the art, I like the fantasy piece where it is a little bit different from zoo animals. That's incredibly refreshing that you're trying something new. We've seen a couple projects. We've seen kind of the Whelps project with dragons. We've seen crypto raiders with kind of these dungeon raiders. Now we're seeing the goblins, and like what really intrigued me was the deflationary aspect of that. So can you hop into kind of the meat and potatoes of, you had this idea, you wanted to be different, but you also had some of this utility stuff that you wanted to talk about. Can you just dive a little bit deeper there?
For sure. So one of the projects that really got me excited in the NFT space early on was Fremergence, which was, it was free to mint, but it was algorithmically generated abstract art project. And they included a burn mechanism where if you weren't happy with what the generated work looked like, you could sacrifice however many at a rate of n-1 to receive completely new ones. So what that does over time is decreases the supply, because if you sacrifice 10, then you get 9 back and whatnot. And I think that's a very interesting concept, because not only does it keep projects fresh, but it also can act as a sort of re-roll mechanism with, getting desirability into the project and longevity. So what we're doing with the Goblin Goons is 2 weeks after launch, we'll be adding a element called the Pit of Everlasting Fire. And it's basically a burn mechanic where you can sacrifice your goblins to receive ghost goblins, which we posted a preview up on our Twitter the other day as like a sneak peek. But they'll basically be a whole new collection with the total supply being unknown, because it's dependent on how many people decide to burn their goblins.
And what's the benefit of burning your goblin?
So basically, a lot of the burns, it's hard to predict who will burn for what reasons, but I think it can be assumed if someone, because the works are generated with trait distribution, I think it's fair to assume that more common ones will be burned first. And as it's like a reroll mechanism, the ghost goblins will have completely new attributes and rarities attached. So I think people will be looking to reroll to get rarer traits that may be more valuable. But I think over time, as the goblin supply decreases and the ghost supply increases, we'll see some interesting market forces at play, because some traits, maybe because they were super common to begin with and viewed as floor goblins, will become more desirable as the supplies substantially decreased.
And what, like, did you look at any projects besides the one that you already mentioned, for inspiration on how to structure this? Because I feel like we haven't seen as much of the burn mechanic with the Avatar Collectibles projects compared to, seeing it on like some of the art stuff on Nifty Gateway a few months back. What kind of inspired the mechanisms involved in this, in this drop?
Well, I think just with projects like this, in terms of profile picture projects, I think they really need to have longevity in the space, because obviously there's so many projects coming to market that it dilutes the whole kind of how much hype there is to go around, that they really need to do something special. So that was the idea with adding the deflationary utility to them. And also we're doing a few other things with governance tokens, which give people a voting say relative to how many goblins they own. Because frankly, like in my server for investors and just seeing these projects come to market, I've been pretty underwhelmed with a lot of them in terms of how much value they give back to the community and how much say owners have in the direction the project goes.
I like the price point. I like the 0.03 ETH price point on 8,500 total goblins with the burn mechanic. So if it got down to like, 7,000, 6,000, that's relatively scarce with a pretty low selling price. My assumption is that this is going to sell out pretty quick. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Mal?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the price point is beautiful. Like, just given where we're at, and at first I feel really bad because we were talking to the top dogs offline before, and obviously they took a lot of input, not just ours, but there's been this reluctance lately for these 10K drops. And when you think about, like, we're at the precipice where every day is an all-time high for OpenSea collectors actually transacting on OpenSea. So more and more people are finding out about NFTs. And so we're saying fewer drops, while simultaneously the number of people that can come in is increasing dramatically. That being said, the supply is outpacing demand, but for good projects, I think it's an interesting concept. But like, you can't charge 0.1 ETH on every project multiple times a day. And so I think it's a good bet on yourself that if you think it's going to sell out and you can do some cool stuff, it's going to be unique. What I love about this project, and I'd love, Theo, for you to go a little bit deeper, is that when we think about the goats forging, and I'm a big fan of the goats, it's 2 go in, 1 comes out. But this is actually essentially a re-roll, but it is a completely different type of avatar. You're not going to get another goblin. You're going to get a ghost goblin that's going to have its own attributes. And so this evolution mechanic versus this forging mechanic where we're doing this is interesting, because you could argue that if 100%, and maybe I misunderstand the mechanics, so please clarify, but if 100% of the goblins were to go into this fire, you'd have the same supply, but they would all be ghosts. Am I misinterpreting or misunderstanding?
Yeah, somewhat, because the ghost supply is pretty relative. So basically you just receive 1 less than you sacrifice. So
Got it.
The worst value you can sacrifice is 2, because then you're losing 50% of the supply when you receive a ghost. But if you sacrifice 20, for example, and get 19 ghosts back, then it's more so 5%. So what that aims to do is it incentivizes burning. And I've had a few people be
burning
like,
"Oh, well,
yeah, right." I've had a few people be like, "Well, if you can burn, like, if it's not capped and you can burn 50 to receive 49 or whatever, or people pooling their goblins together, then where's the value? Because the whole collection just gets converted to ghosts." And I think what we'll see is there's kind of like a soft burn mechanism, because even though the supply isn't decreasing over both projects, the goblin getting converted to a ghost kind of takes it out of circulation as a goblin. So over time, the Goblin Goons supply on OpenSea will just decrease. And, because this is the V1 project, I think if the project has longevity, then they'll be seen as more valuable for the people who didn't sacrifice for whatever reason. So I hope the 2 projects, the 2 collections, find an equilibrium where it's not worth burning because the goblins are valuable enough.
Well, that's an interesting mechanic. I mean, and it's not without like scrutiny, because as you described yourself, like, could people just could they essentially start their own DAO and say, okay, we're all and that's the only way it would work, because if Goblin 1, 2, and 3 were put in and Goblin, X and Y came out, Ghost Goblin, you wouldn't be able to say, okay, which Goblin produced the ultra rare Ghost Goblin. And so I think that's really an interesting mechanic where people are going to be cautious around how they do that partnership. But I think that it's I love that, if you're willing to put more in, it's not a 2-to-1 ratio where, like, the goats right now, it's an equal deflationary, where you could see hypothetically a few people buy 1,000 or 300 of these, and then they all pool together and they get 299, which is a huge supply. But then you also see someone that puts in 3. And so, like, the weighted distribution of Goblin elimination is completely unique based on those criteria, which is going to have really interesting outputs that are going to be really hard to judge until it happens.
Right. And another thing we chose to do is there's no weighting to what traits you receive on the ghost. So say you have a really rare Goblin, when you burn that, you have just as much chance as everyone else of receiving a rare one for the ghosts. And what that aims to do is, if someone's Goblin's rare enough, then they're not incentivized to burn it to receive rare traits on the ghost as well. And that's why I think we'll find like a kind of a balance between the two collections, where the Goblins are rare enough that it's just not worth taking the risk to try to re-roll for a rare.
So I have one more question. Are you already in contact with the Rarity tools and those other people to make sure that they understand what rare is? Because if you assume there's going to be a period of that hesitation, and obviously you're built in like 2 weeks so that Rarity can be figured out. But I'm curious in terms of 2 questions actually. Are rarities going to be obvious? We're finding more and more that there's 2 challenges. One is, if people see that it's hard to tell the rarity, people are more reluctant to invest on the bell curve of the projects, because you do want those high-end collectors that are sustaining the value and buying them on the secondary market. But I'm curious how your rarity mechanisms before the Ghost Goblins are set up so people can understand how rare they are, because there could be instances where if 2 weeks later I don't know how rare my Goblin actually is and I burn it and it's actually, let's say, a top 5-10%, and now I'm getting a common, how does that come into play?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I was just going to talk about attribute distribution. I spoke about that at length on the D space, because I think it's very important to have, like you said, the aesthetic difference in the rares, but also I think just clear divides in the percentages. So for example, in each trait, we're doing basically commons, rares, and ultra rares, and each category has less than the one before it, and the percentages reflect that significantly. So yeah, we're making sure that if you have a common, then ideally it looks good, but you can also tell it's not like rare. Like, we're not doing any, crazy gold or rainbows and that they're commons, like anything like that. We're previewing the final 10 examples in a few hours, and we're going to show, we've shown one of the ultra rares so far, which is the X copy eyes. We had permission from him to pay tribute to, but
nice.
In a couple hours, we're going to show 2 more of the ultra rares, one of which is a skin, and I think they'll definitely stand out as ultra rares.
Do we have the X copy eyes on your Twitter? Can we pull that up?
They're on the website if you scroll down to the attributes and distribution section.
Right here on the right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Both of those Goblins are cool. I like the party shirt on the one on the left. I like that all the Avatar Collectibles projects feature party shirt collectibles. So I really like that. Let's talk about this roadmap, Road to Conquering Ironstone. Let's talk about what the Goblin roadmap looks like.
So with the roadmap, we tried to keep it pretty standard. We didn't want to over deliver anything or make promises that the community might not believe is in the best interest for the project. So the goal with the project is to kind of run it like a DAO. So what we're doing is with every goblin you mint, you receive 1 to 3 gold coins. Most will just receive the 1 coin, and they're basically voting chips. So it's kind of like shares of a company in a sense. So if you mint 20 goblins, and you're likely to get around 20 gold coins. So when you vote in community matters, you have a say relative to how invested you are in the project. And basically with the roadmap, we kept it quite bare because we're going to have plenty of community proposals and really let owners drive the direction the project wants to go. So for example, say the community has a vote on doing like a buy back and burn or something, for example, and that passes by majority, then we'd implement that and use the community wallet to help fund that. And on the royalties, we're doing 2% of every secondary sale goes to the community wallet, and that's the only royalty. So basically, we hope it kind of creates a feedback loop of feeding back into the community wallet, which is going entirely to future developments.
That's awesome. My boy, All Ether has and by the way, his secondary handle is Tammy for president. So I'm going to have a follow-up question, but he's asking right now about, is there a time limit on the burn? So a year from now, could a goblin decide to burn and become, or 2 goblins decide to burn and become ghosts? Is there any limitations?
No, I mean, we plan on keeping the pit open as long as possible. Obviously, if the community down the line feels like that burn mechanism's been exhausted, we can maybe change it to a different development to kind of change the direction of the project. But like, frankly, we want to put so much of this project in the hands of the community. Like, I've been joking with people that if the community just votes to split the community wallet equal ways between all owners, then we'll oblige, because, you know, we're committed to having everyone choose the path it takes. But no, I mean, we'll keep the pit open as long as people want to burn. That shouldn't be an issue.
The final question, and I'm sorry I'm getting a bunch of questions on this, is there going to be a Crypto Raiders / Tammy crossover? Is there potential for one of these goblins to have a crossover with some of the other utility that's going out there?
Not right now. I mean, if the community thinks collaborations are in order for moving it forward, but if people wanted to see some sort of battle mechanic between goblins, that's definitely something we could look at just implementing ourselves. I don't know if that would need to be a collaboration per se.
We got someone in the chat saying these are a little expensive. Do you have a comment on that, Theo?
I mean, that's funny because I've heard both sides of that. Obviously, as you guys are aware, the norm's been 0.08 for so long. And it's funny, I thought of 0.03 over a month ago before Cool Cats dropped and all of that. So I think 0.03 is quite fair, and I hope that's a price that leaves lots of room for upside on the secondary market, because I think we've seen projects do it the wrong way round and charge a lot for the mint, and then the floor crashes and becomes less than that. So I think it's kind of important to price them relatively fairly and let the market decide where the value and utility lies.
I think
I can't tell.
Go on, Theo.
I was just going to say, I can't tell if that was like tongue in cheek, because I feel like 0.03 is pretty cheap. Like, what do you want it to cost, you know? But all right, yeah, go ahead, Mal.
No, I mean, it's interesting. Like it's so that gives me like the next question is, how quickly after mint will the reveal be? Because like, that's a big thing. Like what we see oftentimes is like the price point on this from an initial mint is really, really good. And then you think about the limited supply, and that's awesome as well. The issue that we see is like, there've been projects that have been like incredibly cheap to mint, and then they just, launch. And then finally the reveal happens and it just craters into nothing. And so I think that maybe some people that have been burned on some of those where you buy it cheap or you're buying it on the aftermarket before they're revealed may incentivize some of that cautious pricing. And so I'm curious, I think for me personally, the fact that it's 8,500, the fact that it's 0.03, you could buy 10 of them for 0.3, which is, pretty cheap relative to many of the other drops that have occurred over the last month. I'd argue that both supply and price are lower than average if we were to look at the last 60 days of drops. So I'm kind of bullish on this price mechanism, but I'm curious, like, when you're going to do that reveal. And it might be on the website and I just forgot.
Yeah, so it's instant reveal. I really don't like the idea of delayed reveal because it just creates weird FOMO for projects, and I think people feel more underwhelmed when it's, they may have overpaid for an unrevealed one and feel like they got the short end of the stick. So yeah, it's instant reveal, and we're making sure all the metadata is kept secure. The attributes are stored off chain.
That was my next question.
Yeah, the attributes are stored off chain except for the gold coins. So that basically means people won't be able, they're not pre-generated or anything. They're generated from the ID from the initial seed. So the Goblin only exists once someone mints it and it's in their OpenSea wallet. And we'll get the Rarity tools and whatnot up within a day. I don't think we do that instantly because then it kind of takes the fun out of discovering what's valuable, and that will be pretty clear from the OpenSea properties what's viewed as rare and common and whatnot. But yeah, I think instant reveal's the way to do it and just let the market see what's valuable.
Caleb lost a decimal place. He thought it was 0.3. So
okay,
we forgive you, Caleb.
That's fine. That's fine.
Please like and subscribe.
That would be quite the haul. 8,500 mints at 0.3 ETH. My goodness.
Right. I saw that Project Ghost did. They didn't do 8,500, but I think it was 0.5 to mint.
And it's a rocket ship, and they're on cool. Like, they just had an announcement that Cool Cats, which is our biggest miss ever, which is going to be crazy to watch over the next few days. I do want to ask a kind of serious question now. Like we were really excited that the top dogs were not anonymous, and obviously you're taking a level of I can't even say it, so I won't even try. But
anonymity.
There you go. But like 888 does that, so it's not uncommon, especially in the crypto space and the NFT space. So I'm curious if you'll tell us why you're a little bit cautious to disclose both your identity as well as your partners.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like just the full doxing of teams doesn't add a great deal in the space. I think the project speaks for itself with the smart contract and the team's dedication and whatnot. I know the rest of the team, so the artist and dev are pretty public as well. The artist, especially on Instagram, people can go look at all his work and scroll through it. I just feel like it's not a massive factor in project success. Like, I don't know if the Bored Apes creators are doxed or anything, but we'll be announcing the smart contract 6 hours from release, and hopefully that clears things up for anyone with questions or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, hopefully the reputation of the project and myself also helps with that, because yeah, I've been running a pretty big server since February, and yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Mo.
No, I was just going to say that's great, and it makes total sense. When you think about kind of what's going on, I think the caution there is just there have been some of those blatant rug pulls. I think the fact that you're willing to come on here is a strong testament. I think that behind the scenes, the strength of your Discord is a testament. A few people that I really trust behind the scenes who've called some projects right. This isn't an endorsement, obviously, from NFT culture, but I think that some people that I trust are big fans of this. So I appreciate the caution in coming public. I hope we reach a point in the future where these things aren't necessary, but we really appreciate you just even coming on to share the story.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you guys having me on again.
Absolutely. I guess one last question, Theo, when you guys, like when creators of projects like this look to get like influencers in the NFT space, in other words, people that are notable on Twitter and have big followings and change their profile pictures to, to avatars from drops. Is there a strategy to get in with those people? Is it that most projects pay those people? Like, can you give some color on how that works?
Well, I'll say the only paid promotion we've done is I saw Cole Ethereum said he was charging zero 0.1 Ethereum for his profile picture slot for a day. So I initially did that, and I paid him to make it say, "Don't buy Goblin Goons" in like bad writing, like bad font. And I think he donated all that money to an ocean cleanup charity also. So that was nice to see. But I mean, we had a space with Dees, who's a pretty well-known figure in the space. And I think that just came about from me messaging him initially and saying, "Hey, we're launching this project. I'd love to hear what you think." And a big part of this project's just been getting people's thoughts and feedback. And I think that's resonated with some people who feel like they have helped drive it.
Awesome. Well, we'll cover it. We'll probably cover the drop and see what goes down. I have a good feeling that you guys will probably sell out. It depends on how long, but wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty quick with the 0.03 ETH and the amount of hype that I've seen so far. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Look out for this drop. Look out for future streams by Nifty Culture. Please follow Nifty Culture on Twitter at NFT Culture. We did just introduce a way for you guys to kind of donate to us. If you want to do that, you can buy like a sticker, I guess, on YouTube in the live chat. If you click on the little $, there's an opportunity to donate. No obligation, obviously, just throwing it out there. And please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, all that stuff. And yeah, Mal, anything for the audience or anything else for Theo?
Get ready. 0.03 is a cheap price. I can't wait.
5:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So yeah, Discord's discord.gg/Goblin Goons. So come say hi and feel free to ask me any questions you have before the drop. We'll be announcing a few things in a couple hours, but the minting website and contract will be posted roughly 6 hours before the drop.
All right. Some announcements in a couple hours. Tomorrow the drop's at 5:30 EST. Check it out.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.